The most brutal footballer deaths that ever existed. The goalkeeper who died saving a goal. Goalkeepers are often called the bravest players on the field. While everyone else is trying to avoid getting hurt, goalkeepers throw themselves directly into danger. That's exactly what made John Thomson such a fan favorite. By 1931, the young Celtic goalkeeper had already earned a reputation as one of the most fearless players in Scotland. Fans loved him because he never hesitated. If there was a ball to be won, he would dive for it no matter what stood in his way. On September 5th, 1931, Celtic faced Rangers in front of a packed crowd. Tens of thousands of supporters filled the stadium, expecting another fierce chapter in one of football's biggest rivalries. For most of the match, everything was normal. Then came a moment that would be remembered for generations. Rangers forward Sam English broke through the defense and charged toward goal. Thomson saw the danger immediately. Without hesitation, he rushed forward. The striker kept running. Thomson kept diving. Neither man backed down. Then it happened. English's knee slammed directly into Thomson's head with tremendous force. The collision was so violent that spectators all around the stadium heard the impact. At first, many fans thought it was just another hard challenge. Football was rough in those days. Players were constantly getting knocked around. But within seconds, people realized something was very wrong. Thomson wasn't moving. The stadium began to fall silent. Teammates gathered around him while medical staff sprinted onto the pitch. Some supporters stood on their seats trying to see what was happening. Others looked away. As Thomson was carried from the field, nobody knew how serious the injury really was. At the hospital, doctors quickly discovered the horrifying truth. The collision had fractured his skull and caused massive damage to his brain. Surgeons worked desperately to save him. Friends and teammates waited anxiously for updates. Then the news arrived. John Thomson was dead. He was only 22 years old. More than 30,000 people attended his funeral. Even Sam English never fully recovered emotionally from the tragedy. For years, he blamed himself, despite everyone telling him it was an accident. It remains one of the most heartbreaking deaths football has ever seen. But compared to our next story, this was a tragic accident. The next footballer didn't die on the field. What happened to him began after the match was already over. The footballer murdered after an own goal. Every football fan knows what an own goal is. It's embarrassing, it's frustrating, but at the end of the day, it's just part of the game. Unfortunately for Andres Escobar, one mistake on the pitch would eventually become linked to one of the most infamous deaths in sports history. In 1994, Colombia arrived at the World Cup carrying the hopes of an entire nation. Many experts believed they could challenge for the trophy. The team was talented, confident, and expected to go far in the tournament. Then came a match against the United States. During the game, a dangerous cross entered Colombia's penalty area. Escobar stretched out a leg trying to stop it. Instead, the ball rolled into his own net. Colombia eventually lost the match and was eliminated from the tournament. The criticism was immediate. Newspapers talked about the mistake. Fans talked about the mistake. The entire country talked about the mistake. Yet Escobar handled it with remarkable dignity. He publicly encouraged people to stay calm and move forward. Friends later described him as optimistic despite the pressure. Then, just days after returning home, everything changed. On the night of July 2nd, Escobar went out with friends in Medellin. At some point during the evening, witnesses said a group of men began confronting him about the World Cup. The conversation grew heated. Escobar reportedly tried to defuse the situation. He wasn't looking for a fight. He wasn't looking for trouble. But the argument continued. Then suddenly, a gun appeared. Witnesses later described hearing multiple gunshots ring through the parking lot. Chaos erupted. People scattered in every direction. Some ducked for cover. Others ran toward the fallen footballer. Escobar collapsed to the ground as bystanders desperately tried to help him. An ambulance was called immediately. The player who had represented Colombia on the world's biggest stage was now fighting for his life. Doctors worked frantically after he arrived at the hospital. Friends and family prayed for good news, but the injuries were too severe. Andres Escobar died at just 27 years old. News of the murder spread around the globe. Football fans everywhere struggled to comprehend how a sporting mistake could end in such a tragedy. His funeral drew thousands of mourners. Even today, decades later, his death remains one of the darkest moments in football history. Yet as shocking as this story is, it still isn't our #1 entry. Because the final case wasn't simply a murder, it was a level of violence so extreme that many people still struggle to believe it actually happened. The referee torn apart by an angry crowd. Football matches can get emotional. Players argue, coaches argue, fans argue. But almost nobody expects a disagreement on the pitch to end in one of the most horrifying acts of mob violence ever associated with the sport. In 2013, during an amateur football match in Brazil, tensions were already running high when referee Otávio Jordão da Silva sent off a player named José da Silva. The player refused to leave the field. An argument broke out. Witnesses said tempers quickly spiraled out of control. Then, the unthinkable happened. According to police reports, the confrontation turned physical, and the referee stabbed the player. The injured man was rushed away, but later died from his wounds. News spread quickly through the local community. Anger exploded. Relatives, friends, and residents began gathering. What happened next shocked even experienced investigators. The crowd located the referee before authorities could fully secure the situation. Witnesses described a scene of pure rage. The mob attacked him from all directions. People kicked him, beat him, dragged him across the ground. By the time police eventually arrived, the violence had escalated into something almost unimaginable. Authorities later reported that the referee had been killed and dismembered by the crowd. In perhaps the most disturbing detail of all, investigators said his head was removed and placed on a stake. The story spread across international headlines almost immediately. People around the world struggled to process what they were reading. Football had seen riots before. It had seen murders before. But very few incidents had ever descended into such extreme brutality. To this day, the case remains one of the most shocking and disturbing football-related deaths ever recorded. A reminder of how quickly human anger can spiral into something truly horrifying. If you enjoyed this video and would like to know more history like this, subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you in the next video.